All right, welcome everybody to today's lectures. I have one of the people that I learn an awful lot from. One of the things, Justin Janoska is a really good friend of mine, a colleague, a peer. We both had the opportunity and pleasure of learning from each other. Many of you who've taken my courses before know that he's someone I invite to lecture to all of you. He was one of the featured lecturers at the Metabolic Female course and certification. And in this course, he's going to be teaching what I consider, some of the most important stuff. And actually, the reason he's speaking on this is because he is more the expert than I am in this realm. And so he's going to be really talking about several different things. He's going to be talking about his expertise, which is sort of Hashimoto's thyroiditis. But more importantly, he's going to be talking about how the immune system sort of works and how traumas and things like that deal with it. So what I've asked him to do is present to you all on the general concepts of the immune system, Hashimoto's thyroiditis in detail. And then the really important thing, and what I consider him, is he's one of the only experts in my mind who is teaching on this stuff, which is the cross reactions that occur with trauma, the immune system, and thyroid in particular. Now, of course, Justin is not limited to thyroid in his knowledge. He's really an expert in autoimmune, and that's his company, the Autoimmune Revolution. He really is on the forefront of looking at how traumas and really stress toxicity and trauma being a form of stress toxicity translates into immune dysfunction. And today I've asked him to focus mainly on the thyroid, but he might deviate from that a little bit when he's talking about certain things. I really appreciate you being here, Justin. Thank you so much. And I'm just going to let you go ahead and take it from here, and I will mute myself. And by the way, just so everyone knows, listening live and on the recording, Justin's going to follow the similar format where he's probably going to lecture about 45 to 60 minutes. You're going to get a brief break. He will take Q&A for the live people that won't be recorded. He'll do a little bit of review when he starts back up. And he's got roughly 3 to 4 hours. And knowing Justin, he's got so much information, he's probably going to take up as much of that time as possible. But I'll let you take it away, Justin. I'm going to go ahead and mute myself. Okay. And I appreciate you so much, brother.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jade. All right. Welcome back, everyone. So here we are in the second segment. And now I'm going to dive more into Hashimoto's specifically and go through all the different triggers and exposures and things that can make the immune system do all these dysfunctional things that I was just talking about in the last segment. So now you hopefully have an understanding of all the different issues that can go on at the genetic level and all the different processes and mechanisms that take place in autoimmunity. So now it's about, okay, well, what really is setting that off? Because that's really where we can make changes and do interventions to control and manage autoimmune disease, right? It's not about changing the genes. It's not about changing the immune system really and its activity by doing something that is more specific for the immune system, but really it's about removing the obstacles and the things that are driving it, right? That's really what autoimmune management is about. It's not about curing. We're not curing anything. There's no cure that exists as of today, as of now. So this is what it comes down to. So we got to break down and see all the different specific things that can take place. And there's a lot. I mean, it's not one thing. Autoimmunity is not caused by one thing. Hashimoto's is not driven and caused by one thing. It's really about a whole puzzle of different pieces. And we have to figure out which ones are there, and everyone's their own unique puzzle. Okay. So I will preface by saying, though, again, that Hashimoto is not limited. Not again, I'll tell you right now, Hashimoto is not limited to a thyroid and immune problem. And that's a big, big misbelief. It's not just a thyroid issue. It's a whole body systemic issue. It's not like lupus, right? Or psoriasis or these sort of other systemic diseases necessarily, but it does affect the whole body. And as you've learned up to this point with Jade, that thyroid hormone affects every cell in the body. So by virtue of that, how can we say that Hashimoto's is just a thyroid issue? It affects every organ, every system, and every cell depends on thyroid hormone. So, but also because of the fact that many people are developing a second autoimmune disease in a silent phase a lot of times without knowing it, like I said. So people can have symptoms attributed to Hashimoto's, but perhaps later down the line, they are developing new symptoms. That is more indicative of the immune system targeting another area of the body. Statistically speaking, people who have Hashimoto's have, at least a 50% chance of acquiring another disease. It's rare that I shouldn't say rare, but it's definitely a very common situation for me where people I work with have more than Hashimoto's when they come to me. And even along the way, I learned they have another autoimmune disease that's going on and they just weren't diagnosed with it. So it's troublesome because the way allopathic medicine is and how the diagnoses take place, and many people aren't diagnosed properly or undiagnosed. And really what you end up dealing with is someone who probably has more going on than they know. So it can be really, really deceptive. And that's why it's really important for you to know this stuff so that you can catch what's going on and be curious. And, you can't make a diagnosis right yourself. You're not a doctor, but you can at least be informed enough to say, okay, this person has all these other things going on. Looks like could be this, could be that. Let's test for this, screen for that, and come to a decision. And then you can then push them, the client, to or encourage them to maybe get a diagnosis or explore further with a professional. But I'll tell you what, for me, I'll talk more about this in the management side of things in the final segment, but it really comes down to the same principles. So whether you may disagree with me on this, but if you have one disease or 8, I don't really care that much, honestly, because it doesn't change the immune system problem, right? Yeah, obviously there are differences in each disease and that matters, and we can look at the details of that, but in the grand scheme of things, it really does come down to the same sort of stuff. So anyway, let's just kind of move on and go through Hashimoto's only today. So like I said, it's not just a thyroid issue. It's a whole body thing. And so we have to really bring that in our vision as we explore the problems going on and seeing that, okay, this symptom's going on and why is that? And what else is that related to? So the question you want to ask maybe sometimes is, where is the other autoimmune disease? Not to try to find one that isn't there and make something up, but just to be curious enough to go, well, could there be a possibility of another issue going on beyond the thyroid? So this graphic here is just a reminder that genetics are just warehouses, right, of genetic potential in that lifestyle and exposures determine the expression of these genes. And with repetitive exposure, the immune system behaves differently. Okay. No one wakes up one day reacting to 17 foods, right? It's an accumulated loss of tolerance. Autoimmunity is a slow progressing disease for the majority of people. Yeah, there are people who have diseases that, like at age 12, I've seen definitely people who tell me, oh, my kid is 13 and has lupus or has Hashimoto's. Like, and yeah, maybe the progression really was quick. They were exposed to things and this happened really fast, and then the body just kind of went haywire. But for the majority of people, it takes a while. One thing that's changed is that we used to think that Hashimoto's was just a disease for women who are, postmenopause. I mean, like in their 50s and beyond, or 40s and 50s. My mom was diagnosed with it when she was around 50, a little after that, roughly. But she easily was probably dealing with autoimmune issues since close to when I was born, I would say. Don't know exactly, but this is what happens for a lot of women. And you're going to see that in people you talk to. And so the point being that it's not just one exposure. It's not like the immune process I showed you earlier. It's not like that happens once and you have autoimmune disease. It happens over and over and over and over and over again with many, many antigens. And sensitivities build up over time. And then the immune reactivity gets stronger and stronger, and then more barren issues take place. And eventually you have this enhanced reactivity and symptoms that are really prominent that you can't ignore. At the end of the day, Hashimoto's is one big tangled knot. So in order for us to untangle this knot and get someone in remission, you have to not only find the root causes, obviously, and tame the immune system. A lot of people ask me, what's causing my weight gain? What's causing my vertigo, my brain fog, my fatigue? Or like my client actually earlier this week who said, I have lost my sense of smell, not COVID related, ironically. Is that related to Hashimoto's? And I said, I actually don't really know, but you know what? Probably something to that degree. So these are good questions, good questions to ask. And you might get something like this. Maybe you already have. It's somewhat tricky in the sense that hypothyroidism or lack of thyroid hormone utilization can cause pretty much most symptoms a client is encountering. Hot hair loss, fatigue, dry skin, cold extremities, amenorrhea, brain-based fatigue, forgetfulness, joint pain, IBS, etc. But any root cause you identify can be involved in the symptom profile too. Okay. So yeah, there are specific pathways and mechanisms in which certain root causes create issues in the body, right? But at the end of the day, everything affects everything, mind and body. I don't get too caught up in the root cause is responsible for this symptom. It's like A plus B equals C thing, right? Some people really get caught up in that. And I really want to encourage you to get away from that because it's not that simple. The reality is that there are many moving parts. And while science will tell us that there are pathways and mechanisms, the body is complex and we don't know everything. We mostly don't know everything. So in the final segment, I will talk more about how I look at this and how to address untangling this knot. But hopefully you can just see from what I'm saying here that we need to really take a step back and look at the totality of the issues or the weak links in the chain, as I call it. Okay. So let's look at the contributors. Now, these are the major like 6 components. I mean, if you really were to categorize in a couple things, this is really what it comes down to. What's causing the immune dysregulation? You know, how many root cause, you know, people ask these questions, how many root causes does one have? You might never know. The goal, honestly, for me and what I teach is that it's not about identifying every root cause and to get rid of every little thing you find and to test for all the things. When someone has enough root causes, though, it creates not only an immune response through various mechanisms, but there can usually be secondary issues that arise from that. So for example, I have a client currently who has an eating disorder. So food restriction can really change the gut microflora, right? As you might know, due to lack of prebiotics, nutrients for them, or high levels of stress around food and anxiety and mental stress. And the wear and tear on the body expressed through leaky gut, intestinal permeability, right? Blood sugar imbalances, all those things, right? Start to come together and it's all, again, mixed and mashed into this tangled knot, right? So that's the thing. You really want to see how there's a sort of domino effect that happens, or you know, how about like mycotoxins, right, from mold, and that can aggravate the immune system, but it can also shut down liver detoxification and suppress parts of the immune system, right? So there are secondary issues that arise from root causes that cause Hashimoto's, right? And that's the point. And you might know this, but it's like, okay, well, what is happening and why? And you can learn all that stuff, fine. But you know, you want to understand that, you know, thyroid hormone, if there's a deficiency of thyroid hormone, that's also going to be involved in some of these symptoms. So, you know, it can get really confusing. But if you really just kind of take a step back and see that, okay, there are all these things going on. I don't need to figure it all out to master this. It takes a huge weight off of you. And that's how I look at things now. So we're going to go through each of these 6 components. And with the exception of genetics, because I just kind of went through that, but that's the one variable that we can't change, right? And we know about these genetic SNPs and polymorphisms, the HLA region on chromosome 6, and that is involved in presentation of antigens and all that stuff. So I apologize if some of this is repetitive of what Jade had mentioned earlier in this course, but I will just go through each of these as efficiently as I can.